I buried my wife 6 months ago. Every night since I've called her phone just to hear her say, "Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet." But last Tuesday, someone picked up, and the voice that answered, it was hers. "Tom," she whispered, "I need you to listen very carefully. I'm not dead. My name is Tom Riddichfield, and what happened next destroyed everything I thought I knew about losing the love of my life. I'm 38 years old, and until 6 months ago, I had what everyone calls a perfect life. Not perfect in the Instagram way, where everything looks flawless but feels empty. Perfect in the real way where you wake up next to someone who makes you laugh before coffee, who knows your worst fears and stays anyway, who turns grocery shopping into an adventure. That someone was Vera, my wife of 15 years. Vera Riddichfield was the kind of person who made librarians seem like rock stars. She ran the children's section at our local library, and kids would literally drag their parents there just to hear her read stories. She did voices, you know. The giant in Jack and the Beanstalk sounded like a grumpy Brooklyn taxi driver. The princess in Sleeping Beauty had a southern drawl. Parents would stick around just to listen, pretending to browse books while she performed. She was 36 when she died. 36 years old with laugh lines just starting to show around her green eyes, with plans to renovate our kitchen with a half-finished scarf she was knitting for my birthday. The police said she died instantly when the truck hit her car. October 15th, 9:17 p.m. Rainy night, intersection of Maple and 3rd. The driver ran a red light doing 60 in a 30 zone. I identified her wedding ring at the hospital. They wouldn't let me see her. "Trust me, Mr. Ridgefield," the officer had said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "Remember her how she was." Her father, Morton, had to identify the body at the morgue. He came out looking like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. "It's her," was all he said before collapsing into a chair. The funeral was everything Vera would have hated. Formal, quiet, everyone in black. She always said she wanted people to wear Hawaiian shirts to her funeral and play nothing but disco music. But grief doesn't leave room for humor. Her father, Morton, gave a eulogy that made grown men cry. My sister, Polly, held my hand so tight she left bruises. My best friend, Dennis, had to practically carry me to the car afterward. But here's the thing about grief that nobody tells you. It makes you do insane things and call them normal. Like keeping your dead wife's toothbrush in the holder, like buying her favorite yogurt at the store before remembering. Like paying monthly bills to keep her cell phone active because the phone company made an administrative error and didn't disconnect it, and you decide that maybe the universe is giving you a gift. So, every night at 9:17 p.m., the exact minute she died, I call her number. 4 rings. Then her voice. "Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet." Sometimes I actually leave messages. I tell her about my day, about how Dennis is trying to set me up with his cousin, about how Biscuit, our golden retriever, still sits by the door at 5:30, waiting for her to come home from work. My sister Polly thinks I need therapy. "This isn't healthy, Tom," she said last week, finding me asleep on the couch with my phone in my hand, Vera's contact still on the screen. But what does healthy even mean when half of your soul is gone? When you wake up reaching for someone who isn't there? When you make dinner for 2 out of a habit and eat alone staring at an empty chair? I'm an insurance adjuster. I investigate suspicious claims. Find the truth behind fires and accidents and theft. I'm good at it because I notice details, patterns, things that don't fit. But I never noticed anything wrong that October night when Vera kissed me goodbye and said she'd be home by 10 Surun. Book club is reading something depressing again. She'd laughed. "If I'm not back by midnight, assume I've run away to join the circus." Those were her last words to me. A joke about joining the circus. So, when I tell you that last Tuesday my dead wife answered her phone, you need to understand that I'm not crazy. I know what death is. I've lived with it for 183 days. I've memorized its weight, its silence, its finality. Death doesn't make phone calls. Death doesn't whisper your name. Death doesn't tell you to meet them at the place where you first said, "I love you." But Vera did, and everything I thought I knew about losing her was about to shatter into a million pieces. My living room had become a shrine without me meaning for it to happen. Vera's reading glasses still sat on the end table folded neatly on top of a library book she'd never finish. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Bookmark stuck at page 247. Her coffee mug, the one with World's Okayest Wife printed on it, sat washed and ready by the coffee maker. I couldn't bring myself to put it away. Every morning, I'd reach for it before remembering, then use my plain blue one instead. The photos were everywhere. Our wedding day at the courthouse because we'd spent our wedding fund on a down payment for the house. Vera in her $50 sundress. Me in my only suit. Both of us laughing because the judge's toupee had shifted during the ceremony. Our trip to Yellowstone where she tried to pet a bison and I'd nearly had a heart attack. Christmas morning last year, her wearing the ridiculous elf pajamas I'd bought as a joke. Biscuit tangled in wrapping paper at her feet. I met Vera 15 years ago at a book fair I'd stumbled into by accident. I was looking for the exit after getting turned around in the community center. And there she was, surrounded by kids reading Where the Wild Things Are with so much enthusiasm that even I stopped to listen. She roared at the wild rumpus part, and 20 kids roared back. When story time ended, I pretended to browse the cookbook section just to stay near her. "Unless you're planning to make that beef Wellington," she'd said, appearing beside me. "You might want to stop holding that book upside down." That was Vera. She noticed everything, called you out with a smile that made you grateful for the embarrassment. We went for coffee that day, talked for 4 hours. She told me she'd become a librarian because books raised her after her parents died when she was 7. I told her I'd become an insurance adjuster because I liked solving puzzles and helping people, even if they usually weren't happy to see me. We built a life together, piece by piece. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make the headlines. Saturday mornings meant pancakes with too much syrup. She'd read while I cooked, sharing random facts. "Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts?" She'd say, and I'd respond with something like, "That's 2 more than my ex-girlfriend." She'd throw a cushion at me and we'd end up eating cold pancakes an hour later. She had this habit of leaving sticky notes everywhere. In my lunch bag, "You're the jelly to my peanut butter." On the bathroom mirror, that face. I loved that face in my coat pocket. "Drive safe, speed demon. I need you back in one piece." I still find them sometimes, hidden in books I haven't opened, or jacket pockets from last winter. Each one feels like a paper cut to the heart. The accident happened on a Wednesday. She'd been at her book club, the one that met monthly at Rosemary Chen's house. They were reading something about grief, ironically enough. Vera had called me at 8:30, said they were wrapping up. "Rosemary's crying into her wine again," she'd whispered. "I think this book broke her." Home by Tencor, Tommy Bear. The police came to my door at 11:15. I knew before they said anything. You don't send 2 officers for good news. They said words like instantaneous and nothing she could have done. And the other driver was killed too. But all I heard was the silence where Vera's voice should have been, filling our house with commentary about her day, singing off key in the shower, talking to Biscuit like he understood every word. Morton, her father, handled things I couldn't. The funeral arrangements, the memorial service, the cemetery plot. He'd aged overnight. This man who'd been like my own father for 15 years. "She loved you more than words, Tom," he'd said, gripping my shoulders at the funeral. "Don't you dare forget that. And don't you dare blame yourself." But I did blame myself for not insisting I pick her up, for not checking the tire pressure that week like I usually did, for not saying I love you when she left. Just see you later. Because we'd had 15 years of laters and I'd assumed we'd have 15,000 more. My sister Polly moved in for 2 weeks after the funeral. She'd make me eat, force me to shower, sit with me through the endless nights. "You need to let her go," she'd say gently, finding me staring at Vera's contact in my phone again. "But how do you let go of someone who's woven into every fiber of your life?" Her shampoo still sat in our shower, her voice still on the answering machine, her handwriting still on the grocery list stuck to the fridge. Milk, bread, those cookies Tom pretends he doesn't eat, dog food, love. That last item was pure Vera, turning a mundane shopping list into a love note. This was the life I lived now, surrounded by evidence of a love that had nowhere left to go. Tuesday nights started like every other night had for the past 6 months. I'd just gotten home from investigating a warehouse fire in the industrial district. The owner swore it was electrical, but the burn pattern suggested arson. I'd spent 8 hours sifting through debris, taking photos, interviewing witnesses who all seemed to have rehearsed the same story. My clothes wryer of smoke and lies. I poured myself a glass of Vera's favorite wine, a Malbec we discovered on our anniversary trip to a local vineyard 2 years ago. We bought a case, promising to save it for special occasions. After she died, every night became a special occasion because I'd survived another day without her. The bottle was almost empty now, and I'd have to open another soon. We'd laughed about growing old together, drinking wine on the porch. When we're 80, she'd said, we'll be those drunk old people who embarrass everyone at family dinners. At exactly 9:17 p.m., I dialed her number. It had become a ritual as essential as breathing. 4 rings. Then her voice would fill the silence. "Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet." Sometimes I'd talk to the voicemail, tell her about my day, about how Dennis was trying to teach me to fix cars, about how Polly had started dating a pediatrician who made terrible jokes. Sometimes I just listen and hang up, letting her voice be the last thing I heard before attempting sleep. But on the second ring, someone answered, "Hello, Tom." The wine glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Red wine spread like blood across the boards, seeping into the cracks. My legs went numb. The voice coming through the phone wasn't similar to Vera's or reminiscent of Vera's. It was Vera's. The way she said my name with that slight catch on the T that happened when she was being serious. The exact pitch, the exact tone she used when she needed me to really listen. I dropped the phone completely then, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't hold it. When I scrambled to pick it up, wine soaking through my socks, glass crunching under my feet, I could barely press it to my ear. "Vera," the word came out as a broken whisper. "Tom, honey, please don't hang up. I know this is impossible, but it's me. I'm alive." My mind fractured into 2 parts. One part screamed that this was impossible, that I'd held her cold hand at the funeral home, that Morton had identified her body, that we'd buried her in Riverside Cemetery in the plot next to her mother. The other part knew that voice better than my own heartbeat. 15 years of hearing it every morning, every night, through laughter and arguments and whispered intimacies in the dark. "This isn't real," I said. "Someone's playing a sick joke. Who is this?" "Remember Pretzel?" the voice said quickly. "Our first dog, the one we found behind the Chinese restaurant on 5th Street. You wanted to name him Dumpling, but I won because he slept all twisted up like a pretzel. Remember our first fight? You'd forgotten my birthday because you were so nervous about meeting my dad that you'd mixed up the dates. You showed up with gas station flowers and a Snickers bar, and I laughed so hard I forgave you immediately." My throat constricted. Nobody knew these things. We'd never told anyone about Pretzel because we'd had to give him up when we moved to our first apartment that didn't allow pets. The birthday story was one we kept private, too embarrassed by its absurdity to share. "At our wedding," the voice continued, "when the judge asked if you took me to be your wife, you said absolutely instead of, 'I do.' And everyone laughed. But I loved it because it was so perfectly you. Enthusiastic, unconventional, completely certain. That was all I could manage." My legs gave out and I slid down the wall, sitting in the spreading pool of wine. I can't explain everything over the phone. They might be listening. Meet me tomorrow at noon. You know where, Tommy Bear. Our special place from the early days. The line went dead. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. I immediately called back, my fingers fumbling with the screen. Straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Vera. Leave me something sweet." I called 6 more times. 7. 8. The same message every time, like the past 5 minutes hadn't happened. I called Polly, barely able to form coherent words. "Someone's messing with me, Paul. Someone who sounds exactly like Vera called me. They knew things, private things." Polly drove over immediately. Found me still sitting in the wine. Glass shards embedded in my palms from where I'd tried to clean up. "Tom, you saw her body. We all did. Morton identified her at the morgue. This is grief playing tricks. Maybe someone hacked her phone, found old texts or emails. But as she bandaged my hands, all I could think about was our special place. The abandoned Ferris wheel at the old Wonderland Park where we'd had our 3rd date, where I'd first said I love you, and she'd said it back. Nobody else knew about that spot. We'd never taken pictures there, never told anyone. It was ours alone, sacred and secret. The voice had been perfect, not an imitation, but an exact replica down to the way Vera's breath caught slightly before saying something important. Someone was either playing the cruelest joke imaginable or the impossible was somehow true. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Vera's voice saying, "I'm alive." I sat at the kitchen table with the accident report spread out in front of me, studying every detail under the harsh fluorescent light. The truck driver, Brian Whitt, blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit, dead-on impact. Vera's Honda Civic crushed beyond recognition. The medical examiner's report noting injuries consistent with high-speed collision. Time of death, 9:17 p.m. But something nagged at me, a detail I'd been too grief-stricken to notice before. Ver's wedding ring was listed as not recovered. The police said it probably came off in the impact, lost in the wreckage. But that ring hadn't come off Vera's finger in 5 years. Not since her fingers swelled during allergic reaction to shellfish. We joked about having to cut it off someday, and she'd said they'd have to bury her with it. At the 3 a.m., I pulled out our photo albums studying recent pictures of Vera with a magnifying glass like I was investigating one of my insurance cases. There, in every photo from the last year, that white gold band with the tiny sapphire I'd saved 6 months to buy. She never took it off. Not to shower, not to sleep, never. I called in sick to work at 7 in the morning. First time in 5 years, my boss, Harold, sounded concerned. "Tom, you've been through hell. Take all the time you need." Then I did something I hadn't done since college. I loaded my gun. After Vera's death, I'd bought a Glock 19, paranoid about my own safety in ways I'd never been before. Death had visited once. What would stop it from coming again? I'd gone to the range twice, learned to shoot adequately, if not well. Now I loaded it with hollow points and tucked it into my jacket pocket. Dennis called while I was driving to Wonderland Park. "Hey man, you okay?" Harold called me. Said you sounded weird. Food poisoning. I lied, surprised how easily it came. Bad Chinese takeout. You need me to bring anything? Ginger ale? Crackers? No, I'm good. Hey, Dennis. Random question. That week before Vera's accident, you worked on her car, right? There was a pause. Yeah, oil change and new brake pads. Why are you asking about this now, Tom? Just trying to understand everything. You know, make sense of it all. Tom, brother, the truck ran a red light. Nothing wrong with Vera's car would have changed that. The brakes were perfect. Engine was running smooth. That drunk bastard killed her, not mechanical failure. I thanked him and hung up, but his words echoed. The brakes were perfect. So why had the accident report mentioned brake failure as a contributing factor I'd rake malfunction prior to impact? Wonderland Park sat on the outskirts of town. 30 minutes of backroads and memories. Vera and I had discovered it by accident on our third date, looking for a scenic spot to watch the sunset. The park had been closed since 2008, a casualty of the recession and changing times, but the Ferris wheel still stood, a rusted giant against the sky, and we'd climbed the operator's platform to watch the sun disappear behind the mountains. "I love you," I'd blurted out, completely unplanned. We'd only known each other 3 weeks. "Thank God," she'd said. "I've been holding that in since our second date." Now I parked at the crumbling entrance at 11:45. Autumn leaves swirling around abandoned ticket booths and concession stands with faded menu boards. The place looked like a cemetery for childhood joy. Weeds grew through cracks in the pathways. The carousel horses, once bright and cheerful, were now paint-chipped and grotesque in the gray morning light. I checked the gun in my pocket, safety off. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The insurance adjuster in me had taken over, the part that investigated lies and uncovered truth. If this was a con, I'd expose it. If someone was using Vera's memory to manipulate me, they'd chosen the wrong mark. I walked to the Ferris wheel. Glass from broken light bulbs crunching under my feet. The metal groaned in the wind, a sound like grieving. At exactly noon, I saw movement near the old ticket booth. A figure emerged, medium height, wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt despite the mild weather. The person moved carefully, favoring their left leg slightly. The walk was familiar. Vera had broken her left ankle ice skating 10 years ago, and on cold days, she'd had an almost imperceptible limp. My heart hammered against my ribs as the figure stopped 20 ft away. "Tom, don't come closer yet. I need you to understand something first." It was her voice again, but now I could hear something else in it. Fear. Vera had only sounded afraid twice in our entire marriage. When her father had his heart attack 5 years ago, and when she'd called me from a broken elevator trapped between floors. This was that same tremor, that same carefully controlled panic. The accident wasn't an accident. I discovered something at the library in the old archives, the basement section that's supposed to be historical documents only. I found recent files, Tom, documents about the Northfield Foundation using the closed wing for something illegal. Money laundering may be worse. I made copies, hid them. Someone found out. "This is insane," I said, my hand tightening on the gun in my pocket. "If you're really Vera, if any of this is real, show me your face." The figure reached up slowly, and I held my breath. The woman slowly pulled back her hood, and the world tilted off its axis. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to stay standing. It was Vera, but changed in ways that made my chest ache. A thick scar ran from her left temple down to her jaw, pink and raised like it was still healing. Her beautiful auburn hair was dyed black, chopped short and ragged. But those green eyes, the ones that turned gold in sunlight, the small butterfly-shaped birthmark above her left eyebrow, the way her nose crinkled slightly when she was about to cry. It was her. Vera, her name came out broken. Half prayer, half accusation. The truck driver wasn't drunk, Tom. He was paid to kill me. But I survived. Barely. She took a step closer and I could see her hands shaking. A woman named Nadira found me crawling from the wreckage before the police arrived. She was driving behind the truck, saw him accelerate into me deliberately, saw him brace for impact. She's a former trauma nurse, fled from Afghanistan, lives completely off the grid. She pulled me from my car and drove away before anyone else arrived. "The body," I managed to say. "Morton identified your body." Vera's face crumpled. The Northfield Foundation has connections everywhere. Police, coroner's office, even the hospital. They staged everything. There was another woman who died that night, a homeless woman about my age and height. They burned parts of the body, made it unrecognizable enough that Morton, in his grief, just nodded when they said it was his daughter. The ring they claimed was lost. They needed that gone because it wouldn't have fit the other woman's finger. My mind raced through the impossibility of it all. But why didn't you come to me? 6 months, Vera. I've been dying every single day for 6 months. Tears ran down her scarred face. They threatened you, Tom. The night of the accident, before they thought I was dead, one of them leaned into my crushed car and said, "If I survived, they'd kill you next. Make it look like suicide." Grieving husband couldn't handle the loss. Nadira convinced me that staying dead was the only way to keep you safe. She pulled out a flash drive from her pocket. "This has everything." The documents I copied from the library showing money laundering through city construction projects. Photos Nadira took of the truck driver meeting with Northfield executives the week before my accident. Recordings from the closed wing of the library where they discussed eliminating the threat. That threat was me. "Why now?" I asked. "Why contact me now?" "Because they're escalating. 3 more people who worked at the library have had accidents in the past month. All survived, but barely. And I couldn't stand it anymore. Tom, knowing you were calling my phone every night." Nadira set up a forwarding system so I could hear the voicemails, every single one. You talking about Biscuit, about Polly trying to help you, about how you still make coffee for 2. I finally broke and answered because I'd rather risk everything than let you suffer one more day thinking I was gone. Suddenly, I heard engines. 3 black SUVs racing down the access road, kicking up dust clouds. They were still half a mile away, but closing fast. "They tracked your phone," Vera gasped, grabbing my hand. "Tom, we need to run now." We sprinted toward the woods behind the park. Her hand in mine was solid, real, warm, calloused in the same spots from years of handling books. This wasn't a dream or a grief hallucination. We crashed through underbrush, branches tearing at our clothes. Behind us, car doors slammed and voices shouted. My car's on the other side of these woods, I panted. They'll have the roads blocked soon, Vera said. Then, as we ran, she dropped the biggest bombshell yet. There's one more thing. Morton isn't my real father. He's one of them, Tom. Has been my whole life. My real parents discovered something about Northfield when I was 7. Their car accident wasn't an accident either. Morton was assigned to raise me, to watch me. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Morton, who'd walked Vera down the aisle, who'd been at every holiday dinner, who taught me to fish. Morton, who'd identified the body. We burst out of the woods onto a service road where I'd parked my backup car, an old habit from my investigation days. Always have an exit strategy. I yanked open the door and we dove in. The engine roared to life and I floored it just as the first SUV appeared in the rearview mirror. "Where's Nadira?" I asked, taking a sharp turn that nearly put us on 2 wheels. "Safe house, 40 Me North. She has new identities for us. Passports, documents, everything." I drove like I'd never driven before, using every trick I'd learned from investigating accident scenes. Which turns were blind to pursuers, which roads had multiple exits, where the old logging paths intersected with highways. Vera guided me through back roads she'd apparently memorized, her voice steady despite everything. As we hit the highway, she reached over and touched my face with trembling fingers. "I'm so sorry, Tommy Bear. I'm so sorry for all of this. For the pain, for the lies, for letting you grieve." "You're alive," I said, my voice thick. "You're alive and you're here. That's all that matters." But even as I said it, I knew our old life was over. We could never go back to Saturday pancakes and sticky notes and quiet evenings with books. That Tom and Vera were dead now as surely as if the truck had killed us both. "There's a turnoff in 2 miles, Vera said, checking the side mirror. "Nadira will be waiting." I took her hand, squeezed it tight. "Together. Together," she confirmed. The SUVs were gaining, but we had something they didn't expect. We had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And we had each other against all odds, against death itself. The exit appeared ahead, and I took it at dangerous speed, tires screaming. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The dead had risen, and we were about to disappear completely. 3 weeks later, Tom and Vera Richardson sat in a small cabin in Montana, their appearances completely transformed. My hair was now dark brown and grown out into a shaggy mess I never would have tolerated before. Vera had dyed her hair blonde and wore thick-rimmed glasses that changed the entire shape of her face. The scar was hidden under expertly applied makeup that Nadira had taught her to use. We looked like completely different people, which was exactly the point. The flash drive's contents had been anonymously sent to 7 major news outlets and the FBI through encrypted channels Nadira had set up. The story broke like a tsunami. Northfield Foundation exposed. Decades of money laundering and murder. The executives were arrested in a dramatic raid that played on every news channel for days. Morton Blackwood was among them, hauled away in handcuffs from the house where Vera had grown up, the house where he'd pretended to be her loving father while reporting her every move to murderers. The investigation revealed the horrifying scope. Vera's real parents, David and Linda Morrison, had been journalists investigating Northfield 29 years ago. Their accident had been the first of many. Morton had been planted to raise Vera to ensure she never questioned her parents' death, never looked too closely at the wrong things. He'd played his role perfectly for decades. The devoted father who'd walked her down the aisle at our wedding with tears in his eyes. Dennis and Polly believed I'd suffered a complete breakdown and disappeared. They held a small memorial for me, thinking grief had finally consumed me. I watched the footage online from our laptop in the cabin, my heart shattering as my sister wept for her lost brother. Dennis spoke about how I'd never recovered from Vera's death, how I'd been calling her phone obsessively, how he wished he'd done more to help. "We can never go back," Vera said, closing the laptop. "Everyone we knew thinks we're dead." I thought about our old life constantly. The house with the crooked mailbox that I'd been meaning to fix for 3 years. Biscuit, who was now living with Polly and probably wondered why we'd abandoned him. Sunday dinners with friends where Dennis would argue about football while his wife rolled her eyes. The library where Vera had made storytime magical for hundreds of kids who still asked when Miss Vera was coming back. All gone, erased as completely as if it had never existed. But as I looked at Vera, alive and breathing beside me, reading a book in the dim cabin light, I realized something profound. Grief had taught me that losing her was the worst thing imaginable. It was a pain so complete it had rewritten my entire existence. Getting her back, even in this twisted way, even if it meant losing everything else, was worth any price. I called your number every night to hear your voice. I told her one evening as snow began to fall outside our window. Now I get to hear it every morning when you wake up. That's not a tragedy. That's a miracle with a price tag. Vara pulled out a burner phone one morning. 3 weeks into our new life. There's something else. Nadira found evidence that my real mother might still be alive in witness protection. Linda Morrison became Linda Smith living in Oregon. The Northfield rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought. I took the phone, looked at the information, then at my wife. So, we're not done running. No, Vera said, but at least we're running together. We packed our few belongings that night. 2 suitcases, new identities, and a lifetime of secrets. As we loaded the car, I thought about the last words of Vera's voicemail message. The one I'd listened to hundreds of times. Leave me something sweet. I pulled her close in the darkness. I've got something sweet to tell you. Even death couldn't keep us apart. How many couples can say that? Vera smiled. A crooked smile I thought I'd never see again. The one where the left side of her mouth quirked up slightly higher. Just us, Tommy Bear. Just us. The knock at the door came at dawn. 3 sharp raps that we'd been expecting, but we were already gone. 5 hours down the highway with new names and new stories. We'd left only a note. The dead don't stay buried when love keeps calling. My phone, the one I'd kept to call Vera's number, lay at the bottom of a Montana lake along with Tom and Vera Ridgefield. But somewhere in a small town nobody's heard of, Jack and Emma Richardson were learning to live again. We got jobs at a local hardware store, paid cash for everything, and built a quiet life that looked nothing like our old one, but felt like home because we were together. The real lesson I learned. Grief is just love with nowhere to go, searching desperately for its missing piece. But sometimes, impossibly miraculously, that love finds its way home again. Even if home is now 1,000 miles from everything you once knew, with the person everyone believes is dead, sleeping beside you, breathing steadily in the darkness like a promise that some loves are stronger than death itself. 6 months ago, I thought I'd lost everything. Turns out I'd only lost the life I thought I needed. The life I got instead, the one where my dead wife answered the phone and gave me a second chance, was worth every sacrifice we'd made to keep it. Every night now at 9:17 p.m., instead of calling a phone number, I hold Vera's hand. Real, warm, alive. She squeezes back 3 times. Our new code for I love you. We don't need words anymore. We've already said everything that matters. We chose each other over the entire world, and we do it again in a heartbeat. Some stories end with death. Ours began with it. And every morning when I wake up next to my wife, who everyone thinks is dead, I remember that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that refuse to end, even when the whole world believes they already have. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about the people you love and what you do to keep them, then please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me what you would do if you got that impossible second chance. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories that will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, loss, and the impossible miracles that sometimes happen when we refuse to let go. Thank you for listening to my story. Hold your loved ones close tonight. You never know when everything might.